Welcome, everybody, to Sparks in the Dark, our weekly online poetry series. Today we have with us Perry S. Nicholas, and he's a professor emeritus of English at SUNY in Erie, SUNY at Erie in Buffalo, New York, where he was awarded the SUNY Chancellor's Award and the President's Outstanding Teacher Award. He has published one textbook of poetry prompts, 3 full-length and 7 chapbooks of original poetry,
1 second.
along with 2 CDs of poetry. He has hosted 6 poetry venues over the years in the Western New York area,
No, it's going to be in here.
and he has read his work in Woodstock, Kingston, Albany, New York City, Plymouth, Massachusetts, and Athens, Greece. He has been nominated 4 times for a Pushcart Award. You can see his work at perrynicholas.com. His book, called The Unveiling, was released in December of 2023 by Finishing Line. Now, I just ask one thing. If you're not participating, if you could mute your line, that would be great, so we don't have any background noise. So if everybody could mute, unless you're speaking. All right, so that's it. Take it away.
Hey, John. You're going to have to hold it to your ear.
Yeah, Rob, I think it's you that needs to mute. That'd be great. And Kathy, you don't have your glasses, so I don't know. Can you really see us? What are you doing?
I only need them when I'm reading, but
Oh boy. Okay, Rob Hitchcock, if you could mute, that would help us. So I don't know, my computer's not liking to do stuff today, but so Perry, let's start like we usually start. What did our theme, and once again, Anik, I think Perry's listened in on at least 10 shows this year. So how did that theme this year strike you?
Well, I spent some time thinking about it and I kind of broke it up. Well, what I started out doing was trying to pick poems that moved back and forth from dark to light, night to dawn, black to white. And I remember one poet earlier in the series was talking about how poetry was both the white and the black keys on a piano.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was kind of interesting to me. So I started out with that, and I have some couple of moon poems. The other way I looked at it, John, was the spark, I think, in my poetry and in any poetry really that's interesting is the turn. The turn is in a sonnet, it has to be a turn, or else I always ask myself, if you can express your situation, you can express conflict that you're going through, and you can't somehow maybe change it or change the question at the end, then I always ask myself, then why write it all? I mean, who cares? I'm sorry, but nobody cares about Perry Nicholas. They care about, is it universal? Is it have something I can understand? Yes, I took care of a sick parent, and I understand that situation. So I try to think of it in terms of the spark being the turn, if that makes sense. And then also, I was thinking about the spark, and for me, has always been, and like many of you, I'm sure, is learning something new. You have to be learning all the time, or else you wouldn't be here at noon on a Wednesday trying to, listening to me. But what I do in the pandemic, which again, I found really, really hard. I know some of my friends thought the pandemic was, oh, wow, I had all this time to do this and this and this and this. I really hated it. I absolutely hated it. But I tried to make some light out of it and the best out of it. And I started painting, for example, which I had never done. Music wise, I started listening to a lot of opera and learning about opera, which I always wanted to do. Poetry, I actually put out a new book and I had never thought I was going to do another one, honestly. And don't ever put out a book during the pandemic because that's about the dumbest thing you could ever do. But I think I've sold about 5 copies. So and the other thing that I did new was language. You know, I love language and I'm Greek American, but I always wanted to learn Italian. So I took a lot of Italian via Zoom. So those things I think are sparks, you know, leading to the light. And the other, I guess the third part of it is just um, I try to think about the light that I have gotten from uh, living in a Greek world and an American world. I've always lived in split worlds. That's how my life was. It was always half Greek and half American, right down the
Yeah.
line. And so I tried to think of um, and I've started to I realized a while back that I think I've taken light from both of those worlds. So the poems are, well, I think I picked, you know, indicative of those three things.
Um, great. So let me just ask you this about your latest book. Was there a theme for the book, or was it just a collection of
How to
things
get
over?
out of this mess, maybe that was the theme. I'm not sure. What do you do during this mess?
Yeah.
How do you find light in this dark years of no, I don't know. I guess I started the unveiling, you know, the poem, the title poem kind of comes from the idea that the poet Rachel Hadas, as many of you probably know, she wrote a wonderful poem, and it's and she said in it, when the time comes, will we want to take off our masks? And so I kind of started thinking about that idea. So I think the poems are about that, but they're the usual family, learning, teaching type poems, I guess.
Yeah, I know there'll be a little tour of Greece also, so
Oh yeah,
we'll, we'll wait for
there is
the
a lot. Now I'm starting to write a lot more in Greek, I think. So Kathy will appreciate that.
yeah, I was gonna say. Yeah. So Perry, share some of your work with us.
Um, well, let's go the moon theme first, I guess, since I have that out. This is my very first book, The River of You. So I went all the way back to there and took this poem to start with. And it is a there's a Greek saying that says we have good moon times and we have bad moon times. So that's what this poem is. Calofengo, cacofengo. By this time next year, the moon will be 1.6 inches farther away. The boys on the pond too impatient to play their hockey in a smaller circle of light. This the shrinking stage youth might have counted on. Remember years ago when we glided through those scenes, starring your luminous skin and our caution? I never dreamed there would be a sequel. But like a play that refuses to close, my eyes drawn to the pond, I imagine you out there, mourning the moon in its cold costume, skating over the truth that you will never see it or me this complete again. Calofango, cacofango.
Kathy's writing all this down. I'm going to hear it in June, probably. All the same quotes.
And that's a real old saying, yeah. Let me see about this one. I think this one I have to read on the screen. But this is that no, that was my very first book. And so this one is a brand new poem that appears in no book yet. And I don't know if there's going to be another one ever. I always say that. Maybe there will be. Who knows? I've forgotten the moon and the year we landed. The time I tipped, you uprighted me. Shadows still stand, some good, some bad. Hopefully, this is a good cycle. Turns out bad things happen, yet guide me to something I was looking for. Ah, moon, you're beyond reach now. I stretch out my arms, prod the empty space with the tip of my pen, and the tiny portion of my heart that remains real, not mechanical. I didn't believe the black and white photos they showed of a man bouncing back then, but I do believe in them now since I spotted you again in the universe, taking charge of the soft violet sky. Early morning, always the best for viewing and musing. I recall the blue cold days, two bodies brushing as clouds covered us. And I've finally forgotten our hard descent. Couple of moon poems.
Very nice, very nice.
Thank you. Thanks. I enjoyed writing that. More? Are we continuing?
We have 4 hours to go.
Okay, I'm ready. I got about.
So Anik, if I say it's
only
an
have
hour,
50
don't believe me.
50
We just keep
52
going
poems.
until either Perry gets exhausted or falls asleep. So,
Second last book was called "The Man As a Man on the Moon," and
Yeah.
I painted the cover. This is a painting of mine that was transposed onto
nice,
the
very
cover
nice.
during the pandemic. It's kind of goofy if you look at it real close. The moon isn't really symmetrical, but anyway, I just started. So what are you going to do? And this one is about I think ends up positive. It is there's one reference here, and maybe you know it, and I'm sure Kathy does. You know, the big deal for Greeks is not Christmas, it's the Epiphany, right? And so Greeks they have a thing that they do on the Epiphany where young boys dive into the water. They dive into the water trying to retrieve a gold cross that the priest throws in, and whoever gets the gold cross has good luck or good fortune for the rest of the year. So there's a reference to that in here. Epiphany. The new year has flipped a fresh page, and I realize I don't know your address. Accidentally deleted your number. No more downward glances. And I've been told your face appears heavier along with your mood, no longer lit up and striking, though that serves to sadden me more, reinforce any notion of grace. There's no room left in us for great insights or blind trust, and I have less space for suffering. As a boy, I dove into the bluest water, searching the Aegean for a cross to parent me through rough tides. Hoping to resurface with a gold reward, I may have a little something left to offer.
Nice.
Thanks.
And
Where do we go from there?
Perry, I'm still having some internet issues here, so
Okay,
if I don't talk for a while, just keep going.
just keep reading. Okay,
Our guy, just jump in and criticize it.
Everybody reads a poem. Okay, that's fine. I guess the next area that I tried to cover was again, as I said, the living in split worlds. I grew up exactly right down the middle. English to father, Greek to mother, and always split like that. And it took me a while to realize that I was getting something from both.
Yeah.
And even though it was kind of a weird situation. This one appears in the new book, The Unveiling, and it is, well, you poets will know there's a lot of references to Frost because he's one of my favorites of all time. Read, since I was 10 years old, probably. And there, the whole idea of kind of living in two different worlds. The epigraph is Frost. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads. Only English outside our home. My father would warn us as we left for our American school, already afraid that we, little foreign boys whose mother talked funny, would be singled out as different, dumber than our classmates. We'll call you Perry, not Bundelis, because it sounds less foreign. Likely after the crooner of the decade, Como. And they crossed out the Greek in my birth certificate. My baptism in American waters scared me from wandering too far in either direction. So I chose a path of shy and smart. Books and silence and more books, working to be more than a two-headed student of life and language. I waded deeper into the woods of my education, only to return home, feel guilt at those left behind. Parents long gone before I veered toward this fork, writing, speaking, reading, translating, and I took what appeared to be the sensible road. But what difference did it really make? Now, not sorry I learned to travel both, navigate the middle with balance and grace.
Hmm.
So that's the two roads. Stay on the Greek theme and before we break, or you're the boss there, John. So okay, one more. I'll go back to the screen again. Now this is again brand new, and as I said, I've been probably putting a lot more Greek into. I guess it's on my mind. It's really weird. I don't mind sharing you with this. I rarely dream of my parents. The last dream last night I dreamt of my mother, and I think it was because I was thinking about this reading, and she was speaking to me, of course, in Greek, and she was scolding me as usual. But I thought that was kind of strange because I never really dream of her. This one is I recently read a book by Alex Michalidis, and it's called The Fury. It's a wonderful book, and so the epigraph for it is Alex Michalidis saying, "This year the fury caught up with me." Fury. In my heart, the tiniest of islands, still lives a wind that whips, deafens, punishes. Domenos, old Greeks call it. In the Cyclades, where only those who survive one understand, those whose heartache has been pounded mercilessly against the stucco walls. Now I exist on this small sliver of land in the midst of a sea of strangers. Silence struggles at the core of these winds. Yes, Cardiamu, what's left will beat softly in the small center of you until I am ready to step off shore and board, sail across the water, singing an ancient ode of sorts. Domenos, maniamu, iorgistin cardiamu, the rage, my madness, the fury in my heart. Thanks. That's kind of fun.
Okay.
Proceeding, or what would you?
Ah,
Keep going, or
what's that, Perry?
keep going, or
Oh, yeah. Listen, I'm
discuss?
losing the internet about every 2 minutes. So let's see if it's stable. So it just keeps going. Ah. Okay. Yeah, Perry, just keep going because yeah, I just
Okay.
lost it again. As soon as I said I'm going to lose it again, I lost it.
Okay.
Now,
This is as I said during the pandemic, I trying to learn some new things, and one of them was painting. So I studied a lot of Van Gogh, and this poem is kind of inspired by his what's supposed to be his last painting, I think, "Wheat Field with Crows," if you know it, and in the darkness in it. So that's what this one is. What is the inspiration for this one? Is "Wheat Field with Crows." Van Gogh after the pandemic. A colorist I'm not, even though my methods have changed. Landscape shifted a touch beyond these faded images. I leaf through old photographs, ones depicting us as sowers, king and queen of the wheat field, making love, jealous, every stroke in between. I'm not a colorist, but my hues have brightened some. More yellows, more effort to capture space between your eyelashes. Ask questions we never dared answer, simplify, fill in all our pencil lines. I've lived alone so long, insides, blacks, and whites. There is no choice but to bandage wounds, pursue color in a flurry, create thicker, longer brush strokes of apology. I am nothing greater than my last self-portrait. I wonder if he might have added more crows. I wonder if this is my last attempt too. You, the unabashed auctioneer, and this, my humble, colorless offering. I guess, Van Gogh's brother always used to tell him, you got to use more color. You're too black. Put some yellow in there. This poem has a reference to the poet Jack Gilbert. I think someone mentioned him in the series earlier. Spent a lot of time in Greece by Jack Gilbert. And I always try to write a birthday poem. So this was written around a birthday during the pandemic. It's called Shelf Life. When I finally let go, memories of me will have a shelf life of 3 days. The first, for all to rest up from watching and waiting. Second, for sifting through signed books. The third, for the moon to appear with no exclamation on my end. The quiet will close quickly, dark around the language of light. Nothing will ever change. Read a poem for me after searching stocked cupboards. Raid my computer for passwords to secret prizes. A poet once said, romantic love has a half-life of 2 years before it spoils over. He probably had the timing right, left preserves in the pantry too long, and I too will likely topple while reaching. 2
hey,
years.
Perry, we're at the halfway point.
2
So
years
this is the
pretty
time.
sad.
Yeah. Wait, hold on a second. No, this is the time where we have the audience ask some questions or give you some
Uh-oh.
comments.
Uh-oh.
Anik, Rob, Harriman, or Sue. As I say, Anik, you'll enjoy this. Don't let the poet off easy. this is your time to rain on his
How do I-
parade.
how do I on this then?
What's that?
Oh, you can hear me?
You can.
I didn't know. Never mind, keep talking.
Okay. Anybody? Kathy?
Sure. I was really surprised by the Alex Michaelides poem, and I had just read that as
Did you?
well. So yeah, so I was really interested in how you took it to your own experience, but used the wind that was such a big part of that book,
Yeah,
especially at the
I
island.
liked it. Did you like it? I
I
liked it.
did. I enjoyed it. It's a really interesting narrative perspective, but I thought it was fun to read.
Yeah, yeah.
It kept you going. And I know you know this, but I do love hearing all your poems that incorporate the Greek side and the American
oh,
side. And I'm
thanks.
not always familiar with everything like the Kalofengo, Kakofengo. I'm not familiar with that, but I understand it.
Sure.
But it's fascinating to me to hear about other people's experiences.
Right, I enjoy writing like that.
So Perry, did you teach yourself to paint or did you have some teacher or mentor?
I found a woman who lived down the street and during the pandemic, and she had a studio kind of set up in a garage, separate from her house. And she said, you can come over here, but you're gonna sit way over there, and I'm gonna sit way over here. And we both wore our masks, and she would tell me things. She would just tell me, maybe you should have some blue, some yellow. She would coax me, and I produced some I thought, pretty good things. It was fun anyway. But that's kind of how I learned was uh, in her little studio.
Did you find some comfort in a creative practice that was kind of silent in a way? Different than,
Other than poetry, it's
yeah,
certainly
that was more a meditative physical space than writing.
it's certainly different. Do you paint, Guy, at all?
I
Or
don't, but I've often wondered about that.
I found it really hard, really
Huh.
hard.
Yeah.
And I found that I didn't do very well at it unless I had her nearby saying, maybe you should try this and maybe you should try. In other words, if I just sat at home and tried it myself, it really stunk. I mean, it
Right.
just was terrible. So it's different. It's definitely different. I mean, there's
Well, I'm the one who
paintings.
mentioned Jack Gilbert last week. I've read a lot of Jack
That's right.
Gilbert.
You mentioned them. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no, he's one of my favorite poets, and of course, a lot of his work takes place in Greece, and Monolithos, I think, was the island he lived on.
Is it? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
He's really, really good. But that when I think of Jack Gilbert, I think of that poem, Last Hotels of Paris. Oh my God, what a
Oh,
what a
yeah,
great,
yeah.
great poem. That's where he got the shelf life line, in fact, for mine. He says
Okay.
romantic love won't last more than 2 years or something.
Yeah. Yeah, he's all about the loves in his life, that's for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah,
Really great, really great.
good to hear.
Hi. Oh, hi, can you?
Anik, you didn't ask your question, Anik.
Well, now I will. Was there a specific time that you became aware that you were writing or wanting to write, especially poetry?
Well, being a teacher, it was always kind of in my mind. But I honestly didn't start writing poetry until I was 50. That's only 20 years. That's short. that's short in my mind. I just I don't know. I taught all those years. I always wanted to write, and then I just said I'm just going to do it, full out, and started going to some workshops and those kinds of things. But I guess the answer to your question is no. I didn't always know that. I always knew I liked books and reading and school and that. But the writing part is, I think, relatively new. You know, 20 years is not long for a poet, I don't think.
And did it feel satisfying right from the beginning, or did you feel you were over your head?
No, it's never satisfying, is it? I mean, it's always just frustrating. It's just like, come on. No, that's not really true. When you hit a line right, that just feels right, or you read something out loud and you go, okay, that's working. You guys are poets, there's nothing better than that. But that's so hard to, I don't know. I guess I feel like by this point in my life, it should be easier.
I want you to see the Greek.
Shouldn't it be a little easier? I should be able to
No,
just say,
it
I'm going to
should
sit
be,
down
but
and write a poem.
I want you to see my Greek crush.
yeah, I don't know that it is. I read something, Robert Haas, I think, said it, that
My Greek crush. Oh, he's very
when you're
attractive.
not writing, it's
Oh,
agonizing.
I hate it.
And when you're writing, it's kind of
Gotta mute.
agonizing. And the
Somebody's
only
got to
good,
mute because I can't hear Guy. Someone's got to mute.
oh, but the only good state is having just written, was basically his contention. It was,
Well, let me ask you this then, Guy. When is a poem done for you? There's
oh,
done.
It, hmm, that's a good question. I mean, I often know, I just have a feeling when things, I don't know, it almost kind of clicks closed or done.
Okay.
Not that I might not go back at a certain point and tweak a word or a line break,
Yeah.
but there is a point where it just feels like when when it has everything it needs,
Okay.
I guess.
Yeah.
There's a feeling like, oh, I can't, aside from maybe minor tweaks, but I'm not gonna expand it. Maybe I'll still cut it a little bit, but there's just a certain point, or it was missing something, and maybe I make that word change, and then it goes, bing.
Yeah.
Oh, that was
Yeah.
it.
Okay.
You know,
Okay. Okay.
I
Yeah.
don't know.
Always, I mean, think about it. You got a certain amount of words and you want everyone to be the best possible choice, and so that's hard. That's hard work, the best possible choice. And so
Yeah.
I'm one of those crazy people who revise forever. I remember once though I asked Carl Dennis lives here still, won the Pulitzer,
Oh, yeah.
and he still lives in Buffalo, and I know him, we're acquaintances, and I asked him the same question one time, when is it done? And he kind of laughed and said, I think it's when I put it into book form. And then I tell myself I'm never going to look at it again, and that's done, and leave it alone. And then I do a reading. And I start reading that poem and I go, wait a minute, that word is not the right word. And he starts again and he starts again. So I guess the answer is never. It's never done.
I would tend to side on that. Done is when I'm like, okay, I can think about a different poem in my mind, but yeah, done, yeah, that's different.
Yeah.
I think when my book came out, also in the pandemic, the first thing I did is I went through it and made changes.
Yeah.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes.
Yes.
Can you hear me clearly?
I can't tell who's speaking.
It's Carrie Hitchcock.
Hi, Carrie.
Hi. I apologize if I was unmuted while you were talking because my husband's around, but he's been taking care of our dog and she's been playing and making noise. Also, I think I only laughed when you were doing commentary, Perry, but you make me laugh. I
Really?
have just a couple comments. I really appreciate your method of speaking very slowly and because I've been very busy and you sit down to hear some poetry and your mind is still going. So even though my sound quality isn't that great with the speaker I'm using, I heard most of it and enjoyed it. I
Thanks.
think you partially answered one of my questions because I was going to comment on the revealing of personal in your poems or in anybody's poems really, but for you specifically. And especially, well, you mentioned in the one line in the poem inspired by Robert Frost where you said, I took the sensible road. And I'm thinking and then you mentioned writing and translating. And I was thinking writing poetry and how unsensible that is. But I guess then you answered my question when you said you didn't actually start writing poetry till years later.
Mhm.
And that brings me to my because you described yourself as shy and smart, and I'm thinking that's not someone who goes out and shares their poetry to me. But
Well,
so sometimes when you're reading, and I think you always surprise me with your lines, like you have so many lines, like I'm like, oh, I have to ask him about that line, but and sometimes you really surprise me how you switch from something concrete to something, well, maybe not concrete, but something more mundane to something like I'm thinking about the line space between your eyelashes, like it was very unexpected. And being the way I am, I'm a very more self-conscious person, and I can't see myself writing about personal relationships. And do you feel like the personal do you mean it in a universal way, or what does that, like you said, it's not you're never satisfied with your poetry, but do you find something satisfying to write about personal relationships?
Well,
Or what does it mean to you?
that's such a big question. Satisfying, yeah, satisfying in a way that I think that, like I said earlier, when you have conflicts in your life or you have experiences, you have to, in order to move on or understand them, I have to be able to express them. Now, whether or not I
Oh,
figure them out or not, the expression is the key, and that's kind of
I,
what I like about poetry. If you can express it, then maybe you can understand a little bit better, and maybe you can move on. I
I see.
guess
And
that's
can you,
fine if I. And then the other part of it is, Gary, that you said about personal. I don't feel these are personal poems. Honest,
oh,
let me just explain that. Once they get on the page, once a poem hits the air, I always feel like it's no longer me.
oh,
If that makes sense. It's hopefully it's something that everybody, maybe somebody can take a piece of, but I guess I don't feel like, I know people say, well, how can you say that you're exposing? I don't feel like I'm really exposing myself. It's no longer me, I think, once it hits the air. I don't know if that quite makes sense or not. I mean, and
well,
people who are close to you never understand that. They never understand that.
oh,
Relatives that listen to me don't never understand that. That you did that. You had 50
oh,
girlfriends? No, I didn't.
but
That's
also, I
not
guess,
I
I mean,
didn't.
is it also true that you can express something in romantic terms that is not necessarily
I hope.
uh,
I hope.
like it's not really what's the word it's not really your experience maybe too, maybe
Maybe,
it's not
maybe.
like literally, like maybe it's not as literal as it,
It's right. That's exactly it. It's not as
yeah,
literal as people
okay,
like to to think, so obviously everything that anybody writes is somewhat autobiographical, somewhat.
mm-hmm.
But once it becomes a poem, like I think it becomes bigger than that. So I'm not shy about reading out of that. Although I've often thought this is a good question for all you poets. Would you read some of these things if that person was sitting right in front of you? For example, my parents. My parents have been gone a long, long time.
Yeah,
Would I read some of these poems? They're rough. Some of them are really rough. You know, we had some rough stuff going on. Would I read it if they were sitting right there in the front row? I don't know. I don't know because they would never understand that it was a poem, that it wasn't, I don't know. What do we say? An attack on them?
Right.
No, so it's a complex thing. I just like the sounds of it. I like writing. I like when something feels like it works. Hard to explain, I guess. But those are good
Thank you.
questions.
Thank you. I think what I'm struck by is how often your poems work for me anyways.
Well, great. Well, great, because that's what for me, it is for, if somebody doesn't pick up your poem and read it and go, oh, I get it. I get what it takes to be sick. I get what it takes to take care of a sick parent. I get that idea. Then who cares? There's not a world out there trying to sit there and know Perry Nicholas, that's for sure. My head isn't that big. I don't believe that. But if you can understand the situation, then maybe you've got something. Now I'm just blabbing. Because John's having technical problems, I think.
Is there something you would love to tackle regarding your writing that you haven't yet?
A subject, Annick? Is that what you're talking about? A certain subject?
You can answer that as broadly as you like.
I don't know. I'm having trouble writing lately. I have to say I don't write as much as I always did. I don't know what that's all about. I really have trouble writing things other than poetry. I mean, I could write a short story if I really had to, but it wouldn't be very good. I could never in a million years write a novel. Too many words. That's all. Just too many damn words. I want 100 words on a page. I want to shuffle them around like Scrabble or something. But God, novel writers, holy cow, that's incredible to me. So I don't know. I don't know. I guess just keep writing. Just keep writing. And as I said earlier, I don't. I always say this is the last one. I'm not writing another one, so I can have extra copies sitting on my shelf forever and ever. And now I think I'm going to do another. What's
Perry, have you
that?
thought about integrating your painting practice with your poetry, or did you
I
give it up
haven't so
already?
far. I have that cover. That's all. This is as far as I've gone. I haven't so far. I guess I could. I don't know that they're all that good, really. Um, so what kind of time do we have here, John? You're kind of
Usually it's time to go back and read some more poems, Perry, and then we
Okay.
come back on at the end.
I'll go by you then. Oh, we have about 10 minutes, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, read
All right.
some more poems, please.
Okay. This one, as I said, during the pandemic, I tried to learn a lot of new things, and I took Italian lessons. Now, Maria LaSalle is going to give me a little leeway here with my Italian, but again, I think this is a positive. It comes out with a positive outlook in the end, and it is called Le Previsioni del Tempo, weather report. Today, il tempo non bello, lacking emotion and sunlight, loveliness and love. I choose to sit alone on a cold stone bench, like a dog waiting for the next car to race by, changing the landscape a bit, alter my forecast of thought and ask, che tempo fa? Nothing changes, just a slight wind. Clouds grow darker, più scuro, threatening, yet non-committal. I observe this day in reverse, truly believe in transformation, then adjust my pace and step with Il cielo sereno, sereno. And after I conjure a cleansing rain, this world no longer seems so parched, weak, and trivial. Stasera, it feels wet, more spirited, and full. Last week they were talking. Thanks. Thank you, Maria. Last week John asked the question. I don't know if he can hear me now, but he was asking, and I think he asked you, Guy, about what's harder, what's easier to write, dark poems or light poems? Something
Yeah, I
like
did
that.
ask that. Yeah.
That, and I was just about to ask you that question when he said that. It was pretty funny, but I didn't know how. I thought about maybe how I would answer that. I'm not really sure. Uh, does that mean serious or funny? Because I find it really hard to write funny things. Now, Carrie said she thought I was funny, and I laughed at that because I don't think I'm funny. I think everybody, everything is, really damn serious. But um, I don't know. I'm thinking about Mike Jerkovic, who read here earlier in the series, and he was asked about, dark and light poems, and he said there's a he was talking about the darkness in example our politics today, and I thought, well, I get it. I mean, I don't see anything funny about it. I could never write a funny poem about politics today. I think, honestly, for a 71-year-old man, it's the darkest, worst period of politics ever in our history. So, how do you be funny about that? So, if you mean light funny, I don't know. I can't do it.
Yeah, I have a good sense of humor. I think actually I'm kind of funny, but it doesn't really come out in my writing
Yeah.
either.
Yeah.
Once in a while,
Here's a funny one. You tell me if you think this is funny. Okay, has nothing to do with anything. Um, it's a goofy rhyming poem. It's in the new book, The Unveiling. It's about, and I hope people don't take offense, but that's okay. I read this actually at a reading. It's about that idea. I hosted 6 poetry venues over the years in Buffalo, throughout Western New York, and you always get those 2 questions. How much time do I have left? You know how much time you have left. You're a teacher. You know exactly how much time you have left. But okay. And then the other one is I wrote this 10-page poem on the way over, so I think I'm going to read it. Don't read it. I feel like saying, don't read it. It's not a poem yet. Go home and work on it for about 6 months. And then come out. Anyway, I was fooling around with that idea, and so I wrote this one called The Poetry Scene. Do we have time for 1 or 2 more?
Yeah. I mean, I'm catching about 1/10 of what's being said. So I'm going to create a poem from all the disjointed internet words.
All
So
right.
that'll come out. That'll be my 10-page poem next. Yeah.
Listen to this one then. Do we have time for 1 or 2 more?
Yes,
I did it
absolutely.
so long through all the others. I don't really care. It would be out the door, except I need to read one from my mother. My poem's the best. The rest are not smart, of any concern to my craft, my friends. It's not about you. It's not about art. I write to find out whose ear I can bend. The one I just wrote on the way over here is 10 pages long. It will change the world. It will touch your heart and conjure a tear, and maybe even help me impress some girl. Sit back and listen. I'm sure you'll agree. It's all about me, 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 and me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's about it.
Okay. And Ted Kooser actually said, somebody asked him, why did you start reading? He said, because I wanted to meet chicks. Writing, because he wanted to meet girls. I mean, I thought it was funny, but who knows? Who
That's how
knows?
most of the poets and the rock and roll singers started, right? Yeah.
Who knows?
Oh,
What do
boy.
we? How much time do I have left? Do I have left for this 15-page poem?
As long as you didn't just write it at the bar.
I just wrote it. Yeah, right before, like 5 minutes before.
Yeah.
We probably have time for one more, I would guess. Let me see time here. John's 5 minutes. So one more? Yeah, I don't know, just since we're having fun here, let me show you this photograph. I think you'll get a kick out of it. I hope you can see it pretty well. Let me hold it straighter. Okay, this is a photograph, who knows, 1940 something perhaps, of my mother. Now, my mother, this was not indicative of my mother. My mother was very, very poor, came from a tiny island, never dressed like this, but then she came here and got glamorized for a while. And so it's just such a paradox, I guess, of a photograph. I wrote this short poem in the new book on, again, she was nothing, her life was nothing like it shows there. And I called it Glamour Girl. You must have been reading an American movie magazine to come up with that satin outfit. Sash, royal turban, and pearls. And you try to seduce the camera, a Hedy Lamarr pose, perhaps. Though you never ventured off your tiny island where people were so deprived they couldn't afford to buy even the cheapest house dress. This was no Hollywood, and I doubt you ever saw a picture show. Where's the abuse and isolation now? Behind you in this foolish photograph? Mother, you sure were a poor movie queen. Would you read that in front of your parents? Probably not. Probably not. Although she would have difficulty understanding English.
I have a question that
Shoot.
didn't get, yeah. Okay, so here's kind of a silly question. I notice sometimes when we're at readings on Zoom or whatever, I see you scribbling things, and I wonder if you're picking up lines that maybe are prompts that you find in other people's poetry. I always wondered about that because I notice you sometimes like scribbling. when
Me?
we're
You're
lis-
talking
yeah,
about me?
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
I bet you everybody here is
You're in the hot
scribbling.
seat, man.
Kathy is scribbling, and Guy's looking down and maybe scribbling.
Yeah,
And
I'm writing
Anik's
in the
got
chat.
it in her head. I could see it and floating around in her head. But no, you're right. I always have everywhere I go, I have a pad with me.
I know.
Just something. There might be a title or a phrase or a word or a idea or something I want to write down. But Zoom readings, the good thing is you got all your stuff here, and I always have notes here, and I write
Right.
down, okay, something really cool that Guy said last week.
Right.
And
Right.
you're right. I guess I use them as prompts, just to, okay, that was a great idea. Ken Holland, he's in the Hudson area. I think some of you know him,
Right.
wonderful poet. He
Yeah.
read, I think a couple of weeks ago, he read this great poem I thought about the letter, and then I went right away and wrote a poem about the letter. So I guess I'm
So
getting
we help.
ideas,
It's
stealing ideas. I don't care. Anything that gets you to write, I don't care. But
Right.
yes, always using them to get myself going.
And I had another question when you were talking about when you write a piece and then you send it into the world and then it's like something else. So it becomes like another entity, or do you kind of disown it? Is it like, giving birth to a kid and then sending the kid off to the world and then just letting it fly and see what happens? Is that?
I think the way you said it first was probably best, Maria. It becomes another entity in itself, I guess is probably what I'm trying to say. If I don't disown it and I don't try to say that's not me or I
Oh,
didn't
right,
do that,
right.
what it becomes bigger than that tiny story. Somebody earlier said, I like how you take concrete things and make them bigger. One of the exercises I had on my creative writing class when I taught creative writing was take a small object and make a big story out of it. That's a great idea. I have a poem called The Pill Sorter, and it starts with a pill sorter. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, but it becomes a huge story about mother and taking care of sick parents and all
I
of
actually love
that.
that poem, but you're always sick of reading it. But
I
I
think
really,
we're out of time,
I-
probably.
oh,
Yeah,
oh,
we're out of
sorry. I
time.
Out of
love that
time, I'm
poem.
sorry.
Anyway,
That's
Okay.
part two. Part two.
okay, next time.
But thank you all for all coming. I don't know how much you can hear, John, but thank you for having me again. And people were great. It was a lot more fun than I thought.
Yeah, my
This was
internet got
good.
disrupted 30 times.
I didn't think about, and to have really good poets too is always a bonus for sure. I'll listen to all of you. You're both, I think Anik and Kathy are both coming up soon. Yeah, and Guy already went. Maria's not going, although I saw Maria's sister this year, and she was really, really good. You could tell her I said that, Maria.
I know, I told her that she has a fan in Buffalo.
She was really good. She's the real deal.
She's really great. She just got a Patterson Poetry Book Award for that book. So I was happy that she's getting more recognized. But I think her work is really elegant.
It's very good. Very good.
Well, thank you, Barry.
Yeah, I'm
Thanks,
just,
John. And it was nice to hear you last week, Guy.
he was
Oh,
really
thank
I'm
good.
invisible because I look a wreck and I'm in Florida, so I'm not in my element.
Oh, that's the part we want to see. We want to see that part though.
Oh, yeah, sure.
All right. Well, thank you so much, all of you. I guess we're all set, right, John? I don't know.
John is like disappeared.
I'm just going to say goodbye to all of you and thank you for coming and
Okay.
spending your time. And I will definitely tune in when you people read too. And
Okay.
all the other people that I see Buffalonians in their names of Buffalonians.
It's
Here,
the
here.
it's the shortest
Take
route
care.
to Buffalo is to go on Zoom.
Beautiful reading. Great group.
Nice group,
Thanks,
real
Terry.
nice. It's easy to
I'm
read for a good group.
I'm
So
sorry I
it-
tuned in late, but I'm glad I tuned in.
It was
Thank you.
fun. It was fun.
Thanks so much,
everybody.
Terry.
Bye,
was
John,
great.
if you're in there.
Bye-bye.
Bye, thank you.
Bye, everyone.